Hello everyone, this is Lacey. As you can see, I'm back at my home, and this is Sekhmet, our adorable, beautiful Kenyan sand boa. And today we are doing a Kenyan sand boa care guide. So welcome to Reptiles, and let's get started. So Kenyan sand boas, as the name might suggest, come from Kenya or Western Africa. Tanzania, Somalia, Egypt, all these places. Now, a regular sand boa will be more of an orange and a darker brown. Sekhmet here is what's called a canary Dodoma. Dodoma is, I believe it's a pattern morph that gives her a little more interesting, cleaner looking spots and a cleaner pattern. And the canary, well, you can see she's nice and light, almost like a yellowy gold, kind of like a canary. And of course she's got that doopy little face that everyone loves about the Kenyan sand boas. Now, Kenyan sand boas, they're an old world species. They give birth to live young called a litter. They can have something like somewhere between like a dozen and 40 babies, depending on the size of your sand boa. Sekhmet here, she's only 2 years old-ish, I believe. I don't think she's quite full grown yet, but she's working on it. She used to fit in a little pocket square on my shirt. She's just a big cutie pie. She has never tried to bite. They are one of the sweetest snakes on the planet. And granted, in her house, which you might remember from our sand boa build, it is mostly just a big container of substrate, but it's a nice container of substrate. And she very much enjoys it. It's her enclosure that I have is a 4x2x12, which for a sand boa is a mansion. Isn't that right, Ladybug? It's a mansion. She likes her mansion. And it doesn't seem like a snake that hides under the substrate would use all that space. But she definitely does. She will just mosey around all around this entire enclosure. And something that I have found that she does is our little like walnut husk, this stuff, the ground up stuff. She uses it like a litter box. It's like she literally will only go to the bathroom, only poop and pee in the sandy walnut husk. Not in the aspen, in the sand. Which can start to take us into some of our care requirements for these little beauties. So, sand boas, you're going to want a loose substrate, something that they can easily burrow in because, as mentioned, they're burrowers. They're sweet little guys that like to dig. So you're not gonna wanna do anything too heavy like cocoa bark, cocoa husk. Definitely not real sand. Real sand is theoretically great because it's literally in the name, but they can get impacted, and you don't wanna impact that sweet little face, do you? Sweet face. So what I do is, like I said, we do the walnut here because it's nice and easily digestible. It's definitely less dense than bone. She hasn't had any issues with it. And then of course we have our aspen, nice and fluffy, which is really good for holding like a burrow, holding her holes, which I am ruining by playing with it. So nice and soft and fluffy. Now with an aspen substrate or with the walnut husk, there is the concern for humidity. You're gonna wanna maybe have like a 40%, between 40 and 80%. It's a huge range. It's Western Africa. It rains, when it rains, it rains. And when it's dry, oh, it's dry. So you're gonna want, it's a range. So you can have humidity spikes, you can spray it down every now and again, just lightly. But one thing you're gonna wanna do when your sand boa goes into shed, you're gonna wanna have maybe like a humid hide. If you don't have a bioactive, have something that you can put some damp sphagnum moss in. Sekhmet, what she does is this is the top half. I have this little rock hide, and it has a bottom. So I'll fill this with sphagnum moss, and when she's going into blue, she just goes right on into her rock and is a happy noodle. I also have in here propped up this nice big shell And what I'll do with this one, I'll find a nice spot with some sphagnum moss, and she will crawl in there, and it'll be like a tiny little noodle cave. And I think she has decided she wants to be on this. She's decided that yes, she wants to be on the show. This is her shell. She's had this shell since she was a baby. This was her first hide. She loves it. But yeah, make sure that humidity is staying between 40 and 80%. You should have like one of those digital hygrometer thermometers. The Govee ones are nice. I have these like little tiny plastic ones that I got off of Amazon in a 2-pack, and it does everything. Humidity, temperature, top tier. Speaking of temperature, you're gonna wanna make sure you have good heat on your sand boa. They do come from a desert. They come from a very warm region of the world. So you're gonna wanna make sure temperatures, you know, on the warm side are maybe up in, you know, the 80s, 90s, like tops. And you're gonna wanna have a gradient. You're gonna want the cool side over here. You're gonna want heat on the warm side, somewhere in the, probably in the region around the 90s, 80s to 90s on the warm spot. And on the cool side, maybe getting down a little closer to the 70s room temperature. So you wanna make sure you have that nice gradient where they can choose if they wanna be warm or if they wanna be cool. For Sekhmet's heat, what I did, she's got underbelly heat, which is actually taken from Lieutenant Dan's enclosure beneath her. I've got a radiant heat panel, and I've got a thermostat on that. So that keeps the temperatures down on the bottom of Lieutenant Dan's house nice and warm. And at the same time, I played around and I used a thermometer, a temperature gun, to make sure that the warm side of her hide on the bottom, that underbelly heat, that is not over 88 degrees. And right now, if I do scoop away some of this, right now, 84, which is perfect. We love that temperature. Another nice thing for having my heat like this is that I can thaw out my rats. I put them in a plastic bag and then I kind of bury them in the sand and they get nice and roasty toasty, and then I feed it to the babies. So while I use that under tank heat via the radiant heat panel from the enclosure below, there are a lot of other options you can do. In her old tank, I used a deep heat projector just on the top of her enclosure, which worked really well. It worked very well. And of course that was also on a thermostat and keeping about the same temperatures. And it was a glass enclosure, so the heat gradient was kept as well, which is nice. You can also do a halogen bulb, which will provide, you know, some good heat, but you're gonna wanna make sure you're turning it off at night because you don't want that light on at night. You don't wanna mess up their day-night cycles because circadian rhythm is important whether you are a talking ape or a tiny noodle. So you're gonna wanna make sure you have that day-night cycle. What I do for Sekhmet's house is I have some LED light strips are wrapped around the top. You can see the light here. And I can control that and set the timer on my phone. Or I can use one of these little remotes here that I keep Velcroed to the side of the enclosures. So I can change the brightness, the color, whatever. I can make it work. Or I can just control it from my phone. So if I'm away, if I'm on a trip, like when I was in Minnesota, I could control everything from my phone and keep their light right. So she's getting a little restless. We're gonna set her back in her house. What do you think, girlfriend? There you go. And in your sand boa's house, you're gonna want some enrichment items, right? As you can see, this is not just a big empty container of substrate, right? We've got little fake aquarium plants. We've got the shell. I've got one of my favorite dumb ones. I've got Godzilla and eating some garden gnomes. And, you know, some wood, some driftwood. And the trick that I learned from Bob Bledsoe is you get like a whiskey sleeve. When you buy your whiskey or whatever comes in a sleeve, you take your sleeve, you put it in, and they can use this as a hide. Now, my Lieutenant Dan, my ball python, Lieutenant Dan, he was not a fan. He did not care for the whiskey sleeve. Sekhmet though, Sekhmet loves it. She's crawling in it, crawling out of it. She's a big fan. So even though their substrate is basically their hide, you want to make sure that you're giving them plenty of places to hide, to check out, just in case, you know, that might be something they want to do. That might be something they're interested in. Of course, you're gonna want your water dish. You're gonna wanna change out that water daily, every other day, keep it nice and clean. Every single time I put fresh water in there, Sekhmet beelines and drinks the fresh water, and it is so fun to watch her drink the water. It's so cute. And then when it comes to feeding, I've got her on, she's eating every 2 weeks. She's eating so basically like every other Saturday, and she's doing a fuzzy rat. I know there's some to do about whether you should be feeding rats or mice or whatever. I like to do the rats because they have a higher protein content. I get mine from Rodent Pro, and they list the nutrition facts on their website. So I do the higher protein option and do the fuzzy rats. Every now and again, I might dust a little calcium on the butt of the rat so she gets a little calcium, gets a little snacky snack, but that's not super necessary. Into other things that are kind of optional, I do not have UVA, UVB on her enclosure. When I first got her, I did. I had the Arcadia Shade Dweller lamp up top, which, it didn't seem to make her feel one way or the other. For the year I had her on that, I have not noticed a difference in keeping her with a UVA, UVB and keeping her without the UVA, UVB. She still has good sheds, she still eats all her food, and she's still has the same amount of activity. She's a happy little lady. So UVA, it can't hurt, right? It's natural. It's what they would experience in the wild. So if you want to do UVA, UVB, by all means, please do. This is not a bioactive enclosure. Where I live, I'm actually not allowed to have a bioactive enclosure because rent is fun. I'm not allowed to have a bioactive enclosure, but if you do have one, why not? That would be really cool. I would love that. Then you could have live plants, you could have all the ice pods, you could have more of a moisture retaining soil. So you could do like a soil blend with play sand and a little bit of clay. Throw in a cup of water, mix it all up and put it in, and that'll help keep your humidity between that 40 and 80%, which would be super cool. But I think I have rambled enough. This has been my first care guide, my attempt at a care guide. If you would like to see more, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see. I will listen. I will do my best. If you're like, lady, go back to doing stories about stuff, I will do that. But for right now, this is how I take care of my Kenyan sand boa Sekhmet. And thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Never stop learning.